Zoom, Google Hangouts, Twitch.
What is a Twitch?
There's a couple. I mean, I feel like I've always been somebody who's been kind of on the technologically cautious
Right. Okay.
category of like, like it took me like a while to actually like get a Facebook. And it was kind of like,
on social media for quite some time.
Yeah, I was really hesitant, and in some senses I still, it has its benefits, and certainly during this
I knew you were gonna say something to that effect. Why does every healer have like a passive aggressive relationship with Facebook, do you think, or social media, I should say?
I guess what it is, I think for me, is that I'm extremely aware of the fact that energy can translate wonderfully through technology,
right?
And can be fostered through technology as well. But at the same time, I feel as though it's kind of like when somebody sends you a short text message versus like really wanting to have like the conversation. I feel like able to see each other's face is like a huge part of it, that I think makes it so much more meaningful now because of social isolation, and because of the fact that sometimes like when you go live in particular apps or whatever, it's like you can't see the people that you're talking to, which is kind of weird. So it fosters like a level of connection that, if used correctly and used with like integrity, can be super, super awesome. But also at the same time, it's like the you have to be careful of like the ego.
Does your ego pop up a lot? You got me.
Does it pop
over here?
I mean, for me, I think life has been such a humbling ass process for me that some of the things I would say previously, I would be like, oh yeah, like I just, like this is what I have to do in order to like generate business, or this is what I have to do in order to stay relevant. I don't care about that.
That is a heavy word, because I think that as a social media influencer, or whatever it is that people say that I am, I do think about, is this status, are my thoughts valid today? Like, because basically a whole bunch of people tell you whether or not they agree with you, or even the shares or whatever. So I appreciate bringing that to the forefront as like the anxiety around social media, and even how it's playing out now.
Because I mean, I think for me, as someone who is extremely introspective, it's like some of the things that I think I really need to just sit on and let marinate. And if it's true for me in a couple of days, then that's actually something that I want. But the whole like knee
like the whole Drake. This is the whole Drake conversation where he's like 72 hours,
Right, exactly. Like I feel, and I'm like that anyways. I feel like I almost have like a delayed response to what is actually happening sometimes, because in some sense, I need to process the fullness of what's happening instead of having my first reaction be the reaction that actually might not be really in alignment with what I really want to be able to do. And I sometimes, like especially right now, I feel that there's a lot of people who are really suffering right now. There's a lot of people who are losing loved ones, and scared about their own health, their own safety, their own mental health. And it's just like, you have to continue to protect your peace during this time in a way that like I feel can only be dictated by what your internal compass is saying. It's like, I need to put my phone down. I literally have.
You put your phone down?
Yeah, like I need to put my phone down. I need to listen to music. I need to read, meditate. I need to make myself a cup of tea. I need to make myself a meal, take a shower, all of these things. I feel that there's a culture that is somewhat harmful to, I think, people, especially who are extremely sensitive, which is that everybody wants to be the first person to share bad news.
Right. I've seen my timeline today, and I'm not saying that people, when they're sharing their news, whether it's good or bad, need to be the first to say it in the family or whatever. And it is often, I think, a hard decision in order to share something, like, especially when you see, that multiple people are going to see it. But I have just been hit with the reality of what it is we're going through every day. And, you and I were talking off camera a bit about just like the rapid thoughts that happen, like, how to find centering and how to find peace. And you had said something, you were like, do you want to do a breathing exercise? And I'm like, are they ready for that? We've been ratchet this whole time, like, but I welcome it, and so I just would like for you to explain, like, why breathing in the first place. We all know, like, just take a deep breath, honey, like, all that. But what is about breathing that makes you as an individual feel centered? What can make someone like me feel centered? Like, what is the breathing thing all about?
Okay, so essentially what it is that a lot of people hold a lot of unconscious tension, whether it's in their shoulders or they have back issues, or they are not really being present in the moment. And breathing exercises help to bring you back to the present moment in which to be able to
take a deep breath.
Right. And so, and a lot of the time, people say, okay, you could take 3, long, slow, deep breaths and just kind of like hold it at the top and hold it as you exhale to kind of like, it's almost like how you would think about emptying some stuck energy inside of your body through your breathing and bringing conscious awareness to your breathing. So like, it is essentially, the goal is to bring you to the present moment, and then also potentially to help to balance you out a little bit. And I think, like, especially right now, I see a lot of people, they're like, like, oh, I'm day drinking, I'm like, I'm smoking.
Talk about it, call me out.
Like, like the whole thing, and it's like everybody has their coping mechanisms. And I'm not one to say like one is better than the other, but the breath is always available to you. That, like, thinking that something is outside of you is going to help you feel better. And I feel that was like a really big attachment that I had in the past, which was that there was this thing that was going to be a catalyst for some internal thing that was happening that would ultimately help to aid me in my process. And now I really, really, really look at it from there are things that I know that work, but one of that would pretty much work for anybody is to just bring it back to the breath. And in yoga, in meditation, generally there are different types of breath, which is called pranayama. And and so, like, in like a more active yoga class, you would basically try to create a breath that you carry through the whole practice, even if you're feeling like this is really physically exhausting, to try to bring yourself to that present moment and away from feeling like, wow, this is so difficult.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done yoga with Black women only, and the one time I did it with, I thought she was white, and then she started speaking Spanish. Still white, but Spanish speaking. So there was that. And there was a position in which I had to like use my arms to like levitate my body and then like kind of like lift my legs up. And then she was like, breathe through it. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But doing so and actually like actively trying to breathe through the position let me know in my body where I was not capable of doing that. And like, it let me know like, wow, this is me present. Like, I can't even lift my leg, right? Which is an ability issue. But the fact that I'm breathing through while I'm trying it is actually centering me. Like, I didn't feel like a failure at not being able to do the move. I felt like I was being intentional while breathing. Can we do a
Mhm.
breathing exercise? I think a few
Sure.
people are watching now, and I think that it might be nice, even for the playback, to just be able to show people like what deep breathing looks like, you know?
Okay, so the pranayama or breathing technique that I'm going to share with you is really, really quite simple. It is called Nadi Shodhana, and essentially it is a channel clearing breath. That's what
Okay.
it is called. And so the right side of your right nostril is associated with the sun, and your
Okay.
left nostril associated with the moon. Because it's evening time, I don't want to hype people up on sun energy. So
Okay.
we're going to with the left nostril,
This
and you can
this
do
one.
this.
Okay.
Yes. So you can do this breathing exercise if you're feeling A, stressed, B, like you're having like those racing thoughts, C, you're having a hard time falling asleep. Anything where you're feeling like, you know what, I'm feeling like I'm about to hit my edge before I start to feel out of control in
Right.
whatever way you feel in your body, whether it's like your heart is racing, you know, you're crying, like whatever it is.
Right. Whatever kind of emotion pops up that you're not ready to handle, you're saying that doing this might be able to mitigate that.
And the thing is, I'm experiencing this myself. I'm having a really hard time having a normal sleep schedule because of the fact that I'm not as active during the day, because I literally go from my bedroom to the hallway to the bathroom to the kitchen to the bedroom. I mean, this is like the grand tour, right?
Right.
So I'm
You're like, and here we are.
right. Welcome to my crib.
Right.
Okay. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your pointer finger and your middle finger and fold them down like this. So it's kind of like a hang time Hawaii
Look,
thing.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm listening to you. Okay.
Okay. So you know what? No, I'm doing it with the wrong because it's opposite because of the camera. So like this. So we're gonna breathe in through the left nostril.
Okay.
Hold at the top. Cross over and breathe out the right nostril. And then breathe in. Mm-hmm. Cross over. Breathe out. Breathe in. Mm-hmm. Same nostril. You can close your eyes if you want to. And you want to end on the left side. So whatever may have been, you know, the thing is about a lot of these practices is about subtle shifts and subtle noticing.
I feel very shifted.
Listen.
No, I'm saying, I'm like, no bullshit. I feel very shifted. I feel like I was a little annoyed about like being late, and I feel very shifted. We are in the present moment. We're at the present time, and the conversation just needs to be had. And I'm in a better place than I was 15 minutes ago. So I definitely feel a shift.
I mean,
I feel like I also have a cold too. So there was that, but.
Well, you know what? That can help to clear your sinuses too, because sometimes you'll notice you're more blocked up in one nostril than the other. Right. And that's a way to clear it. And the more you do it, it helps to build your temperature slightly, so that potentially if you were like a little bit congested, you might, after doing that breathing exercise, you might want to blow your nose. And also if you're sick and you're congested already, keep some tissues nearby you, and there you go. That's it.
I'm gonna mind my business, excuse me.
You're prepared. But yeah, I mean, that's a very, very quick centering exercise.
I liked it. I didn't think I was gonna like it. So she got me flipping the bird, doing the nose thing, and I really enjoyed it actually. I was uncomfortable.
Yeah. So essentially, again, when you do it, you make, and obviously like the hand stuff is not so important as making sure that whichever time of day it is, you're not, it's almost like giving yourself like a shot of adrenaline.
That's what I was about to say. I feel like you let me take a Klonopin. That's what I feel like. Like my anxiety's a little low now. Okay. No.
Okay, good. Okay. I mean, I
Like
didn't
I'm
do
smiling.
it in like,
You never seen me like this before.
and again, these are things that are available to you,
Okay.
and they don't come from a place of I need that in order to. No, you have something, right? You have, and the more tools you have in your tool belt, the better you are at being able to kind of pivot and shift throughout the different, you know, things that are going to happen in a given day that may make you happy, sad, joyful, cheerful, whatever it is,
So you're not, you know,
and
shitting
you can
on
bring it.
day drinking or any other kind of vice. You're saying instead of looking for outside sources, also realize that there's a source inside of you, is what I understand.
Absolutely. Listen,
Listen.
you, yes, that's exactly what I mean. And I think with the whole idea around us really taking a hard look at capitalism.
Okay. I really enjoy when you talk about capitalism and white people. It makes me happy. Breathing, this should be the name of this episode. Breathing, white people, and capitalism.
I don't know if I was. But anyway, the idea is that there's always something outside of yourself that's going to like somehow make you feel better about what's going on. And right. I just have come to this of like, I still like nice things. Okay.
I know you do. We were talking about that, like about like the diva-ishness, you know, and like becoming more of a spiritual person and like what things you have to let go, what things you can keep, but what things you personally are choosing to let go of because they're tied to something, right?
Well, you know how like, okay, in the last couple of weeks, I feel like a lot of people are doing like a deep clean of their house. They're maybe like putting stuff to donate. They're maybe like looking at the stuff in their cupboards and being like, you know what, like there's a you know, a church down the street, let me donate that because we that, like all of that. I feel like in some senses it's all energy, right?
Okay.
It's all,
so it's this restless energy that we kind of have. Like we're saying we have the time, but we may not be acknowledging, some of us, that it's actually energy that's cycling within us that we need to get out somehow.
Yes. I think one of the ways in which to like, if somebody has like a, you know, a workout routine that they do, that like they continue to like do that. But like, I mean more like a giving routine, right? I feel in order to attract like blessings, in order to attract favor, in order to attract new good things that are going to happen as a result of the perspective that's being shifted right now, I feel it is just as important to give as much as you expect at some point maybe to receive. But it's the
blessings.
Yeah. Become a magnet for blessings and miracles. And it's not about expecting. It's just about the act of giving. I know me, you know, I living in New York City, you know, I'm somebody who I've been on the trains a lot, and I'll have like these amazing days where I'm just like, shoot, like I feel so good. And I get back to Brooklyn, so happy to be going back to Brooklyn because honestly, like that's why I moved here. I moved here to live in Brooklyn.
I'm so jealous.
And well, you can come and visit anytime. But
I know I will. I plan on it.
But you know, like I'm like that person. If I see somebody who's asking for money, if there's a way I can, like I literally had this guy in my neighborhood. I literally did not have cash on me, but I noticed that he was collecting bottles, and I just so happened to have like a whole, you know, like industrial size bag of like quality recyclable plastic bottle.
Okay.
And do you want to walk one block over? I'll give you like a whole bag. And he was like,
wow, okay.
He was like, it's not like stuff that's like cheap stuff. I was like, well, I mean, it's seltzer bottles.
Right. You're like, you can have my LaCroix and my Polar. Like,
I'm a seltzer addict. Like
I
me and
hate everybody now. I'm done.
wait, no, but listen, me and my friend,
My best friend is like, me too.
listen, I was like, we should create seltzer con.
It tastes like TV static.
Just go around this big like conference like center and just taste
Doesn't make
different.
any sense. I don't even know how y'all drink hot air. That's what it tastes like.
You know, like stuff like that. I knew that that was like something that would be helpful to him. Who knows how much he actually like got for it, but it was all
Right.
stuff to get money for.
Right.
So
come on, 10 cents in Maine.
what?
It's like, come on, 10 cents in Maine.
Right, exactly. And you know, it's like just thinking about, you know, like how you can be positively impactful to people, I think helps for you to bring it to a place of like, okay, so things are not the way that I expected them to be. 2020 was going to be a movie. This is the wrong movie.
Ooh, I thought I was going to have a great year, and I'm trying to figure out how I can still have a great year amidst COVID. Because there like our ancestors got through the worst, right? Like
Absolutely.
we don't understand this right now, but like niggas went through this in 1918, right? And even before that, and then even after that, right? And so like there's some, you know, I hate that we keep using the word resilience, but it's built into our DNA in order to get through this. And so I'm really excited that I'm talking to you, because I know that, like, you know, people are coming in, and you are, I feel like you're all the things. Yeah. Like, I feel like you are your degree in holistic psychology. It's like, I would have never connected it, because when I first met you, like, you were like, I'm doing makeup, I'm a professional artist, I'll beat your face, and I have professional prices. And I was like, okay, she's serious about her shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? But you see makeup and beauty and doing makeup applications as a healing art modality. Can you tell me about that?
So okay, so we in the industry joke around a lot about how we are therapists just as much as we are makeup artists, you know, and I've been a professional makeup artist now for 16 years.
Baby.
And my daughter just turned 18, and
when you said that, I said, how old are you? Black don't crack. Like, geez.
Well, I am knocking on 40.
Wow, God bless you.
And you know, I definitely have had an amazing experience of being able to be in New York and be doing what I do at a higher level. You know, many more celebrity clientele, but also really like helping people who really appreciate what you're doing, I think is huge. And I have one specific personal client who is basically like, you know, it's my birthday, and she like is like, happy birthday, and like Merry Christmas. It's like literally being appreciated for just being you and bringing the gifts that you have to the table in a totally different way, because I do not have to sell a thing. The main thing that I am doing is providing that experience, and generally these types of conversations with clients. So what ends up happening is that my clients don't look at me as just this person who is replaceable, because in some senses I'm talking about some of the experiences that I've had in New York, because a lot of times people are very interested in what other people are doing.
Right. Oh, I see. You see her over there, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's very cutthroat, and there really isn't any loyalty in the beauty industry. It's like whoever else is out here making people beautiful as well. So no, I totally understand that, and that's why I'm no longer a moi.
Well, I think for me, being as seasoned as I am, I'm able to do beautiful work, and I'm also able to connect with my clients on a deeper level, because of the fact that I'm always like, oh, there's this book that you should read. Oh, have you tried this herb? Are you taking this vitamin? You know, like I really have that, and I've always had that. even before I got my degree, because like, to be honest with you, I think there's this
it's
whole,
so humble for someone who has a degree and like in this work, right? Like you're very humble about it. You're like, I don't lead with that. Like, you know, and I appreciate that about you.
okay, so I think one of my hesitancies, right? So there's a lot of stuff about, you know, being like in your power as like a divine feminine woman, and like one of the things is like talking about your degree all the time is more masculine than feminine, right? And I'm like, okay, yes, but at the same time, it is something that I earned, and it is something that ultimately it was like. So let me tell you my process. So when I was so when I was 19 is when I started college.
Okay.
And it was my first semester, but I was already expecting my daughter. So I ended up having to leave school.
Okay.
And I had my daughter. And then when she was 3.5 is when I started my makeup career.
Right. Okay.
And then when I was 32, I went back to school.
Okay. Wow. That's a huge leap. That's where I'm at right now.
And
except for I'm not 32.
And then I was able to actually finish my degree.
Okay.
And I went back to the same school that I had originally gone to. So what ended up happening in that span of time is that they actually had new major offerings that they did not have before. Leslie,
okay.
Very heavy in education
and
social work.
Right. Everybody I know who went to Leslie has a degree in social work. Yes. Everybody. So to hear that you've got your degree from Leslie University in holistic psychology is just, I'm like, tell me about that. Like, what is it? Like, y'all are just levitating. That's what's happening. I'm running across so many people that are like, you know,
So my experience was especially lovely because what I was able to do as an adult learner was, in some senses, I was able to take undergraduate classes and graduate classes. So I was able to take classes that most of the other students that were in my class wouldn't have been able to take.
Because they were undergraduate, right? And they weren't transfer students. Got it.
I was able to take like holistic approaches to pain and stress management.
Right.
I was able to take, you know, how to create a therapeutic environment with music therapy, art therapy, like all these different things that were more advanced, and they were more like intensives, like January intensive, like summer intensives. Right. So I literally was in school like year round for like 3.5 years in order to finish, but I was able to get some of the juicy stuff of my undergraduate studies. So, and I've always been super passionate about holistic health, and I had a very earthy, crunchy upbringing. And my mother, like my childhood friend I was speaking to earlier, he was like, yo, your mom did not pull any punches. My mom would be like, I would go to a birthday party and, you know, you see like the cake with the flowers and you're like 4 years old and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the prettiest thing I've ever seen. And my mom's like, I made you tofu cheesecake.
You're like, I'm not eating that shit, Mom.
Oh, disgusting. You know, so like my mom was like really, I mean, she was like really, really, really disciplined around like what we ate, but it was almost like a scarcity mentality in a weird way too.
Do you think that that's a cultural thing for us? Is that like, you know, because I think about like what I ate growing up and I wasn't on no tofu, like, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm wondering if that's a cultural difference. I know that there are a lot now, like what you said about Leslie University, like back then they didn't have these offerings. And so now I think about veganism and I think about vegetarianism and keto and all this shit or whatever. And parents are now making better choices, whatever that means, or choices that are best that they can afford, you know, for their children, or being more informed, you know. So I wonder if that's a cultural thing.
So, okay. So my mom is Armenian. And so, in some senses, some of the even the cultural foods that like I normally would have grown up with typically were not a part of our diet at all. So it was like I would
And
have,
Armenian food is good as fuck. I lived in Watertown for 5 years, so
it is beyond. It is beyond. I miss it, and ultimately, like, living here, that's one of the things. It's like I have like different little, you know, like like Turkish or like, you know, but it's not the same as Armenian. Like I would have to go to Queens in order to get that. But anyway, so growing up, like how I grew up, food was like a really big aspect of actually like being devoted to your spiritual beliefs. So
right.
those two kind of like mashed up in a way. And like as soon as I had like the money to like buy like stuff that like my friends like ate like as a snack, like I would like indulge in that just because it was not balanced. I didn't have a balanced way of looking at food. And so it was like almost like to the point of, you know, okay, like I'm gonna like buy all this stuff and like eat it before I get home because I don't
Right.
want, you know, like that whole thing, right?
Right.
But you know, my parents meditated an hour a day. They believed in like not drinking. They believed in you know, abstaining from sex before marriage, like certain things like that. And
Okay.
it for me, like as a child growing up with parents that had these like strong beliefs, in some senses, it made me more rigid in things that
Okay.
ultimately like a child shouldn't be like thinking quite so like heavily around these things, just kind of like be a kid, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, certainly it definitely informed my experience around what it really means to take care of oneself. And my mom, it is still to this day, I mean, she like sent me a care package with like vitamins and like a water purifier and all this stuff. Like, did you get it? Do you love
Right.
it? Good. How are you feeling? You know,
Right.
that's really like that's really her wheelhouse. And I had to call my mom, you know, a couple of weeks ago and, you know, and just say like, thank you for teaching me how to really, you know, take care of myself in this, so that the level of self-care and the level of knowledge versus actually putting it into action has to happen because of
Right.
around the idea that if you don't do certain things, potentially you are weakening your immune system and potentially would start to feel not well. So,
I
you
think
know,
that that's interesting how you were able to find balance with knowing and being aware of how rigid you grew up, right? And then still being like, Mom, I know that this comes from a place of love, and thank you for
yeah,
thinking about me and making sure that I'm okay. Like, you know, I
absolutely.
think that's amazing.
I mean, I did not like it growing up. I'm going to be the first to say it because, like I said, I got made fun of for my lunches. Like my stuff was just not as appetizing or like sexy looking as my, you know, classmates.
You
You
ain't
know,
had no sexy lunch? Okay, all right.
lentil soup in like a Tupperware, you know, with like an actual like silver spoon is not like gonna get
Your mother was like, no plastic for us.
amount of emotion as like a Lunchable. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Um,
Which is terrible because I'd be like, either you want the turkey Lunchable or do you want the Doritos one?
listen, I'm not, you know, in some senses. So part of why I love talking about um, food specifically is that I feel in some senses I always had an issue with being anemic, and when I was pregnant with my daughter, that's when I started to eat meat. So from 0 to 21, I didn't eat any meat at all.
Wow,
And
y'all
then,
were vegetarian? Wow.
mhm,
Wow.
no, but like literally vegan beyond the word, like no eggs, no butter until I was like 10. No dairy, no yogurt, no milk. Like literally,
Wow.
I was eating like steamed vegetables, brown rice, tofu, maybe some beans. Like, there weren't a lot of like, there wasn't a lot of salt going on. There was
I
no
was
sugar
wondering,
going.
I was like, it sounds saltless.
No, listen, it was really extreme. And you know, in some senses, I think with anything in life, when you are certain, you are really, really extreme about something, something is going to come along and shift that extremism
Right.
to, or at least nudge it towards being more balanced. And I think
Right.
that is true for so many aspects of life, not just eating, but like,
Right.
it's kind of like we can potentially use this time to propel ourselves forward in a very meaningful way. It's like when we get to the gate, we are already ready to be and step into what lessons we have learned and how to proceed in a way that's going to be more powerful, more impactful for other people, more
Right.
open-hearted and heart-centered going forward. Like I was, I've been thinking a lot about how systems are so crumbling in front of our, how the illusion having all of these securities for people who thought that they were really secure is the thing that's really flipping people out.
Right.
And I'm literally like, well, I didn't have a whole lot to begin with, so I'm not super like feeling like, wow, everything that I had is gone.
Right.
It's not the same. It's more that I know that I'm safe inside my home. I'm healthy.
Right.
Anybody that I've had because I have had loved ones who are sick and all recovering at this point.
Right.
During the thick of it, there was a lot of praying, there was a lot of meditating, there was a lot of just sending energy to people, whether I knew them or not, to try to give that experience of being like, I know that I'm a little bit more of a, I can be more helpful because I have emptied my cup to a certain degree to actually helpful versus being like, my cup is like here and expecting to be impactful. And I think that's going back to what we were saying before about that knee-jerk reaction of like, I had a really good thought. Let me go live now.
Right.
Let me go live now.
I like how you were talking about earlier that sometimes you had to, like, when we were talking about non-reciprocal relationships, that you had to come into your quietness. Like, so I think now I understand better your relationship to social media and your relationship even to other people, is that it's like, is this where I'm at? Right. And then it's like you being someone who's clairvoyant and having these spiritual gifts, right? It's like knowing the things, right? And then do I act on it or do I just sit with it? I was watching this thing about mindfulness on Netflix. My friend Tamala told me about it. And we watched it. And the Buddhist monk was like, the best way to address the problem, he gave the story about the turtle and the fox. He was like, the best way to address the problem is to sit with it, sit in it. Like, unless it's actively harming you, if you have your bubble around you, your protective shell, unless it's actively harming you, you could be like, there's the fox.
Yep.
That motherfucker's circling me. They're present. And as soon as the problem just lends itself, I think it's always been my belief outside of that story that we as humans do way too much to kind of try to change like what the outcome of something is. And I wonder what it would be if we just allowed the thing to be and let it white supremacy destroy itself. Because right now, and it's wild that I'm saying it, because I spend a lot of my energy trying to teach white people. I do it for money, but I try to like teach white people. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm focusing these shows. No white people are appearing. I think I have one show. That's it. And out of the 22 I have scheduled, I'm more focused on us, right? Like the being, right? And so, I don't know, I just wanted to know what it took for you to get into a quiet space.
So, okay, one of the things that definitely helps is that I grew up with my mother. And so in some senses, I have some tendencies of an only child that like allowed for me to be like this voracious reader and this little artist from like the time I was very small, because there wasn't anybody else to like interact with in that same.
Okay.
I think part of it too is that ultimately, like me moving away from Boston and living in New York, in some senses, the reality is everybody has their own schedules, and a lot of the time they're not going to match up, and it's totally. because that's just the culture of living here, the
Right.
busy culture. But for me, I needed to figure out what was my shit and what was other people's shit. And the only way that I could do that is by completely removing myself. It was like taking, a splinter out of my foot and being like, if it bleeds, it bleeds.
Right.
That's
That's
when
amazing. Because
that's
I'm
when I,
thinking about even your move from Boston to New York and like the circumstances under which we decide to pick ourselves up.
yes,
I also left Boston. And
yeah,
I tell people I left Boston because the rent is so much cheaper here. But there are
right,
circumstances under which I had to pick myself up and be like, what is my shit? Sure, it's definitely 1,200 to almost $2,000 cheaper to live here.
right,
And what am I saying about myself? What are other people saying about me, and how much of this belongs to me? And it was a
yes,
painful process. You and I were talking about the pain that comes along with it. We all talk about healing.
yeah,
Everybody and their mother is like, you have to heal. No one
yep.
talks about how painful that process is.
It's so painful. And the
It's not
thing is,
necessary.
I think there's a lot of I appreciate that you said that I seem very humble about it, because I think what it is that it's just very second nature to me. It's not this is not an act.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like, this is not a performance. I literally have had and had the experience of literally being like, I don't know how I'm going to heal from like this place that I feel right now,
Right.
but actively going to be trying to set myself up in small ways, including breathing exercises, getting
Okay.
enough sleep, eating the right types of food, thinking correct thoughts, and not being self-defeating or being like super critical of myself when I make a
Mm,
mistake. I feel that, I definitely grew up in such a way that, you know, I went to private schools all throughout growing up, and I was like the only brown kid with like no faculty, no one else that looked like me for miles.
mm,
My experience of becoming myself and really growing and developing into like a full human being had a lot to do with adjacency, white adjacency, um,
right.
exceptionalism, a lot of those things that, like,
Mm,
ultimately they did make me very adaptable
right.
to my environment. But at the same time, I cared a lot more about what other people thought of me, because of the fact that I wasn't trying to stick out.
Right.
I didn't really, as a little kid, that's a lot to put on a little kid. And now looking back, and I'm like, I mean, there were benefits, of course, to like being able to be in these educational environments where I really felt like the artist, from like 3 years old, you know what I mean? And
Right. Right.
or like, the things that you have to say are like really actually received in a way that is different than like a traditional, like, kind of like a conditioning way of getting an education, you know?
Yeah. And I think about like I had made a note that the relative relational point that we have with ourselves, like at
Yes.
what point do we come out of ourselves? When you were saying like, I took the splinter out, I need to figure out what's my shit. At what point do we come out of ourselves safely enough than
Mhm.
to be I can't wait till Luana comes. She talks about relationships as a container, and I had never considered it like that. I thought
Mhm.
the relationship was the basis, but the
Yeah.
relationship is just a container for the two people, right? And so
Yes.
like I think about what you just said about how you had to shut everybody out. At what point did you make a decision that it was safe enough that you had done your work,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, to be honest with you, in the last couple of months, there's been some major developments in that I don't need to speak upon necessarily,
Okay.
but they happened, and they were a catalyst for me to be like, okay, now I can just get back to really, really just showing up.
Okay.
But I needed that quiet time, and I needed, it's kind of ironic that I moved to New York to find a peace that I could not find in Boston.
But we were talking about timing earlier. Like when I was telling you, I was like, I just feel like I avoid y'all. You know, so many healers reach out to me. I think if I had to be honest, I think it's y'all's way of like being like, I see you.
Yes.
And I'm here to support you. And I don't know how to accept that shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so like, I had to look back at my chat because you and I were trying to figure out when's the first time we actually met each other. Like, you know, and I remember this conversation at my house. And I think Joanne did bring you, and I'm just not sure. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. I want to keep going. My point is that, you know, a lot of times I run from my own spirituality, even though, you know, I'm initiated and I'm working towards the path that is for me, my own personal shit. But I think about something you had said when you was like, well, DiDi, you know, it's not a cesarean section. Spirituality is not a cesarean section. It's not like you can schedule our awakening, you know, and that shit blew my mind, you know?
Yeah. I feel that, you know, spiritual growth and is in some part the death of prior beliefs, prior behaviors, and things that you need to leave behind, just as much as it is moving forward and healing and all the beautiful stuff that comes with it. And the thing is, I think in the spiritual community, one of the things that is really troubling to me is that like people are really like, oh, like love and light, like that's the only place that they
Thoughts and prayers, sis.
No. And this is the thing, if you're not dealing with your darkness, and if you don't really face yourself in that place where it's just like, it's me looking at me and being like, I don't want to be in this space anymore with the things that I think ultimately are, you know, self-sabotaging, or me not my fullest, most authentic self. I need to step into the almost having the conversation with me to me about what I want to change. Not necessarily in the way that it's like one conversation. It's just more like constantly checking in with myself. So like for instance, I'm very much, because of the fact that I now have you know, like more of a yogic background to you know, how I go about doing things. It's like how you said, like holding a pose was really uncomfortable for you, and then she said to breathe. That is a way to, that's a way to check in. That's a way to dial in, is what they say in like, you know, like an acting class. And it's like, okay, I'm constantly checking in with myself and checking in with my energy. If I am, you know, in the company of someone and then I leave their company, I think, was that you know, illuminating experience? Do I feel like energized? Do I feel or do I feel drained? Because the thing is especially with energy, is that if you have like good energy, there's a lot of people who are like, what is your deal? I'm so attracted to this energy that you have. And it's like, okay, yes, I understand that, but I, at the same time, I'm radiating out, and also I need to make sure that I'm taking care of the inner stuff too.
That people pour back into you, because I feel personally attacked by this entire conversation.
Well, that's not my intention, but
no, I know.
Basically, it's just so important to continue to kind of check in with yourself and be like, look, like I'm gonna work a half a day, not a full day. I'm not gonna push myself beyond the reasonable bounds of what my energy is telling me to do today. I'm not going to try to. There's nobody to impress. There's nobody who is going to wake up tomorrow morning with the uncomfortable feelings that they may feel tomorrow, or, you know, like correct myself. I have to be the one who.
You were talking about self check-ins, right?
Yes, I'm the one who is my own best advocate for my own love that I can give in a way that only I can give myself.
And we talked about Go ahead.
And so it shows up in little ways. Like I said, I think a lot of times people think about self-care. They think about, again, it's a product.
Mm-hmm.
It's something outside of them. And like, for me, obviously working as a makeup artist, a lot of times the materialism comes out in that. And in some senses, it, like, my brushes are one of the things that allows for me to be great. Right. I'm not going to get Bobo brushes and be like, you know what, I'm going to work with this now. Like,
you call them Bobo brushes?
Bobo brush.
When you buy them from crest.com. Don't laugh. I had a set of Crest brushes.
Tools are very important. Tools are very important, and the knowledge that comes with the tools is what allows for someone who is good to be great. But what I will say is that it's not about the face mask. It's about the intention.
Right. So I'm like, okay, under this capitalist society that we live in, that discourages self-care at all costs, especially to marginalized folks. Like, what does it look like to be able to tell someone who, you know, I gave a keynote one time on this, and I'll just pull from it, that we're literally reasons to delay dying or reasons to delay suicide. A lot of women, when asked the question, what is your reason to delay suicide? If you could just lay it all down, right? If you could quit that fucking job, if you could just do what you needed to do to take care of you. If you could stop engaging with your partner's family because it's toxic, you know, what would it look like for you to delay the amount of time or the amount of times a day that you said, I can't take this shit anymore? And a lot of women said, it was my children. I need to work because who else is going to do it? And so in a capitalist society, how do we, especially as Black femmes and Black women, how do we take care of ourselves in a way that's meaningful and like we're not shut out from society? Like, you know?
Well, I have in the past been particularly in a space of almost like martyrdom as the way to show how much I love something or someone. And that was one of the things that I really had to shift, because ultimately, if I'm not okay, how is anybody else around me comfortable with the idea that I'm not okay, but I'm showing up for them? How is that going to work? It's not going to. And ultimately, that's what leads to having nervous breakdowns. That's what leads to having, suicidal thoughts. That's what leads to overwhelm. That's what leads to us being not our best selves when we show up, because we are so depleted. And the thing is, ultimately, everybody is going to have their own process and their own way of figuring out what works for them. But a lot of it just comes back to little small things that you can say, you know what? I have gratitude for that.
So like gratitude is an example, like saying, these are the things that I am grateful for. I'm great. You know, people say it all the time. You have a daughter. I'm grateful for my children. And people would think, okay, but just like if you could create, we talked about the bubble, right? How do I create a bubble around myself to protect me and lean into ourselves for the shit? And you're saying that gratitude is a tool that we have inside of ourselves that we can like hone in on. What else would be a great tool that we have inside of ourselves?
Checking in with your energy. I feel like naps are very healing. Taking a nap, like I'm a deacon in the Church of Sleep. Like I really believe the reset that can happen, and you can take a 20-minute nap and feel like much better. And the thing is, like the whole vibe of go, especially in New York, it's so funny right now. People are like overachieving at the park, because they can't go to or whatever like that. And it's like everybody's going for a run, family run, and it's just like, whoa, like it's so
you're like, y'all just chose to like even take over Central Park the way you do Bally's, huh? Bang.
Right. Exactly. But ultimately, I think what it is that you really having more bodily awareness is an important aspect, and the breath can bring you to more bodily awareness. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm sad. Maybe I need to get on a call with somebody who I think can just like hold space for me instead of continuing to put out and put out and put out and be and be and be for other people. You have to kind of reel that in, because I think the world will take everything that it can possibly get from us, our magic, our brilliance, our presence, our nurturing, and just literally be like, thanks. And
thanks for your support.
Correct. And the more revolutionary way to take care of oneself is to realize no one else is going to do this in the way that I do this for me.
Right.
And so hopefully I will attract the types of people around me who also are taking excellent care of themselves. And when they have a moment where they're not feeling quite so balanced, they're not feeling quite so themselves, I can remind them of who they are, because I'm not projecting. I'm listening, I'm holding space, I am and I'm trying to help. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is one of the major things. You cannot be something for somebody else that you are not for yourself already. You cannot pretend to do that. And that is one of the things that makes like healing and being a healer very complicated, because sometimes it's hard to talk. There's things that are beyond language. There are just things that are beyond language. And you're dealing with a lot of things that are beyond language, especially the deeper you go into different mind states and different aspects of life and emotion. I think that, like, because I'm a watery Cancer, so like I'm
a Pisces. We just
right. I'm always in my feelings to a certain degree, but I think in some senses for me, I think one of my responses always used to be to cry, and crying. There's a very healthy and healing thing that happens when you cry, but there also, in some senses, sometimes that's like your first reaction, and being able to know, like, okay, I need to have a good cry,
right,
or I need to have a good laugh, or I need to have a good meal, or I need to have a good sleep. It's like all of those things. It's like all of the things that like kind of support your everyday being able to show up for yourself.
I love like the way I guess I never considered that before, because I examine my friendships a lot. Like, I don't know if you have friends, but I hate that I have friends, because it's like, this is my friendships are the place in which I really have to examine myself, because there's the reciprocity is the relationship. There's no sex to get like disinvolved with. There's no money usually exchanged. And so my friendships are the thing that I'm like, oh, this is where my work shows up, right? Like, even in my relationship with my child, this is where my work shows up. The ability to apologize, the ability to say, like you just said, actually, I've given out a lot of myself today. I'm calling you because I need to feel like someone can listen to me, process, and that you're not like, well, girl, let me tell you, because it couldn't have been me. Oh, bitch, I know it wasn't you. Right. Yeah. And so, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do hear what you say, but I guess I never, like, I feel like I have a revelation. I never thought of it that way, that sometimes you do need the person who's just like, my boundary is that, I have a friend who will ask, do you need me to listen? Are you looking for feedback? Or do you just need me to be an ear? Listening in the ear, or do you want me to give you my opinion? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so feedback is totally different from the opinion, I feel like, and so this is just like me building like these healthy ass relationships. It's so hard. No one said that healing, no one ever told me. Y'all little healers be like, heal, sis, heal. And no one talks about how fucking painful and egregious it is to heal.
It is. And you know what? It's a everyday type of awareness, because things are cyclical, right? So things are going to cycle back into your life to test you after you thought that you had learned that lesson and that was a nice little chapter that you could just close, tie a little bow, and you'd never have to reopen it. It's going to come back. But what ultimately is the test is you're bringing your full self to the whatever stimulus that is, and being, am I going to respond in the way in which is my former prior way of doing things, or am I going to respond with love?
Right.
Am I going to respond with ultimately not going wherever they are, but giving at the same time the boundary of saying, maybe we should have this conversation at another time. And ultimately, like, obviously me living in New York at this time, I have had a lot of people who are watching way too much news.
Right.
And they're calling me and they're like, like, are you okay? And it's like, wait a minute. I don't watch the news, and I will be the first to tell you, don't watch the news.
Right.
You'll come
it's a vortex.
It is. And the thing is, ultimately, I know for me, what is important will reach me, and what doesn't reach me is not something that I need to take in. As an empath, that is a super, super important thing to learn how to do, because you will feel an overwhelm with things that are not yours. And I ultimately cannot save the whole world by myself, as much as I would like love to be able to do that. Like, I would, but like, I can't. You know what I mean?
How do you deal with that, what you just said about boundaries, right? And so I feel like often when, at first I have a question. I said, how do you deal with, but that's not really my question. My question is, are Black women allowed to have boundaries?
No. But
yes,
you are allowed to. You, as being the advocate for your own self, are allowed to.
It's like we're two selves. Like, it's so wild. Like, it's like we're our spiritual selves, and then we're like the human selves that are like in the society. Like, I struggle with that. You know, I think about friends where I've said, this is a boundary, and because the conversation has maybe our friendship has never crossed over into this conversation about our spiritual selves outside of, you know, I try to explain to a friend this morning boundaries from what I understand them to be, because, you know, I just started my boundary work like 6 months ago. I used to be a very free spirited. I was the hippie that you talked about. I wasn't eating tofu cheesecake, but I was like, no, love is light. And that's why everyone is attracted to me, because I'm boundless. But it was getting me fucked up out here. You understand what I'm saying? Because people knew I had no boundaries and they wanted to ride that roller coaster ride. And then when I was like, wait, I feel sick, guys. I feel like real uncomfortable right now with like, I did too much. Like, you know, and doing that self-checking with myself, people are like, this is not what I signed up for. So how do you deal with the backlash of boundaries? Wow, I need to write that down.
So I think, okay, so the myth of the Black superhuman woman, you know, is one of the things that is a double-edged sword, because yes, we have endured, and we have persevered, and we have loved in the way that we love, and we have brought people along with us, and we have healed people that have not given the same energy back to us, and ultimately gone and done wonderful things elsewhere.
Right. And we can be happy for those people.
Absolutely. It's not about saying, okay, my heart was not in the right place. Your heart is generally going to be in the right place, but ultimately, if your circle gets smaller as a result of you holding boundaries, and the people who cannot deal with,
she's sitting across from me going like that.
Yes, is where you need to go. You need to refine your circle and say, because I used to be like this, right? I mean, obviously working in the industry, whatever like projections people had of me of being very well liked and very well known and so on and so forth. Okay, so I have a lot of acquaintances now
Right.
Call them friends.
So you call them friends, but you had to like go back and be like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Yep.
How do you do that? Like sometimes I think the longevity makes us friends. I have
Yes.
friends that I went to high school with, and we approaching our 20 years together. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so like those are my friends, because if I were to call them right now and be like, hey, I need to process this, or I'm going through something, and I know that they would hold that space because they've known me before I became likable, whatever that means, right?
Yes.
But how do you distinguish between who is a friend? I love what you said about the circle getting smaller. I thought that was an elitism thing, because I used to pine for friendships with people who had small circles, right? Yeah. And now I'm just like, I don't want to be friends with nobody no more.
I think what it is that, like we as women, especially, like I feel like we want to be well liked, and like approachable.
Not
things
so
like
angry.
That. Not so angry, not be like, the I guess whatever stereotype that would be put on us, as far as like us being confident, us being intellectually intimidating, or like whatever you want to say.
I get it all the time. It's like, I'm already probably gonna get a divorce. My husband was like, what are y'all talking about?
But I think when it comes to refining your circle, I mean, especially you, DiDi, you being who you are and having a platform and a following that is growing and expanding, will continue to grow and expand.
Y'all be coming on my show just talking about all the good things. I'm like, okay.
I mean, I see it, but I mean, I think what it is that when you step out into situations where you feel unsure, you on your like one hand, probably like the 5 people who are going to genuinely clap for you, that are genuinely going to be like, I'm proud of you, and not have anything to do with this competitive spirit. Because I think that is a huge aspect of why a lot of women don't get along with other women, is because they're like how men size women up for different reasons, women size women up for other reasons. And it's like, okay, do you want to be like a part of like a toxic brunch club, or do you want to like have one person that you go and really like have an enjoyable time, and like just like talk for hours, and then leave and be like, that was amazing, I didn't need photographers in my face.
See you again, right? Like the toxic
right, that whole club thing.
And I think what it is about, for me, I can't speak for you. I can't speak for Ada, who's sitting across from me. I think what it is I think that I involve myself with people. Even myself, we all have toxic behaviors. I want to be very clear about that. We all have our shit, like, you know what I'm saying? But I think that sometimes my toxicity attracts the toxicity in other people. And when I'm out here acknowledging, I do feel like we talked about non-reciprocal relationship and having to let them go. Sometimes non-reciprocal relationships don't mean that I need my yes person. Sometimes I need someone to be like, DiDi, that's your shit showing up, right? And then I, as the shit showing upper person, go, wow, that is my shit. Or you know what? I don't really like this conversation. Let me come back to it, like you said, but I'm going to think about it. I'm going to take the time. I think that boundary crossing happens, and it's coupled with ego when we don't allow others the time to actually process the error of their mistakes. We live in such a call out culture, and it's such a cancel culture. I mean, cancel the people who need to be canceled. Cancel the people that need to be canceled. Cancel pedophiles, cancel like serial abusers. But if I did something wrong to you, if I walk past you and I'm like, Yevgene, I really didn't like your hair today, now you've got to create a campaign against me. You know what? DiDi Delgado is anti my hair, and this is the narrative I'm going to tell forever. Like, you know, that's not my full self. That's not my whole self, you know? And so I appreciate you saying, I feel like I learned so much from y'all.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I feel like the most important thing that I can do is actually just be that person who can reflect back to you just as much as I may be imparting something that you might not have thought of, because I'm always wanting to learn just as much as I want to give. And I think that that again is the reciprocal relationship. And so seeking out reciprocal relationships and demanding them is a part of also your self-love too. It's being able to say, ultimately, I care for you, but you're not making better decisions than you were making.
Say that one more time.
I care for you. I love you. I want the best for you. But the patterning that you are in, you don't really want to address that, you know? Okay. So it's like the person who has very similar circumstances that continue to happen with different people, and they're literally like men or white people or Republican, whatever, whatever, right. It's like, wait a minute.
Why are we showing up with these same oppressive behaviors amongst ourselves when we're all we have, sis? We're the container for like all the world is going to need to heal. And then it's like we are chasm. Like there's a chasm here amongst Black women and Black non-men, is that we cannot get it together. There is a situation in which I was being ableist. I think I said the word stupid, right? And I was talking about my own disability and when I used the word stupid. So I was being ableist and I was talking about my disability. And the person didn't read anything about my disability and came on the thread and was like, you're ableist and this conversation needs to be shut down right now because you have no authority. You're not neurodivergent. I'm like, bitch, I have BPD. I'm not neurodivergent. I'm on medication. I'm not, and you don't know me. Right. And so the narrative I'm just sharing this with you because it recently happened that it happened 2 years ago. But the narrative got put out there that, like people held that narrative. DiDi's ableist. Yeah. I'm like, is that the sum of who I am? One. And two, do you know that this person texts someone else one day and was like, hey, I've had some time to think about the statement that I made and like this kind of thing that I like created. Yeah. And I realized that I now know who DiDi is. And like, I know, and so DiDi has me blocked because rightfully so. I think that sometimes that blocking thing is like, hold up. I can't protect myself and I'm not going to sit here neither. So this is my protective shell. I'm turtle, bitch. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, this is my protective shell. And so I guess I'm asking you, like, how do we as spiritual beings, in a very physical place and where we're already oppressed, transcend that a little bit, transcend it. So that way, if I'm holding a boundary with you, I can let you know that I'm doing it in love and you be able to receive it in love. Me saying, no, this doesn't feel comfortable for me. Or you know what, that may not be your best self right now. How do the critique that we can give one another not turn into, this bitch had the nerve to tell me? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's a quote. I'm not going to say it exactly right, but it's like setting boundaries is the space between me being able to love you and also love me simultaneously.
Yes. I think I know what you're talking about.
And I think that that's very true because in some senses we enter into social contracts with friends and we enter into social contracts with family, and there are certain expectations that come along with each set of type of relationship that you may have, right? And ultimately, I think it is about being able to say, I am wanting to be here for you in a meaningful way, but I also need to be able to say, okay, I think I understand what you're saying. And given what is going on with me right now, I might not be the right person to continue this conversation right now because of the fact that I think sometimes we almost, like, I know I feel things very deeply. And then I also take people's emotions in almost as if they are my own. And it's like, the boundary is very foggy as far as what are my emotions and what are somebody else's, because I'm very sensitive. And so kind of understanding that like this is creating a feeling of overwhelming me, and I
Right.
isn't going to be helpful to the other person. So then it's like, okay, you know what? Let's take a beat. I really need to eat a good meal. I really need to take a nap. I really need to give Egypt a bath. I really need to, go for a walk, clear my head, and like let's revisit this. And I think that that's one of the ways in which to create a little bit more mastery, is almost to create and carve a little space around what's happening and let it breathe a little bit, versus being like, we have to solve this right now. Because ultimately, urgency sometimes you perceive something as being a super, super, super emergency that ends up being a little bit less than what you were anticipating it was going to be. And that's where blessings come in. That's where favor comes in. That's where the, spirit can move, I think, is if you're able to kind of give situations a little bit more air and not put yourself central to how this is going to have a positive outcome.
And I think I agree with you, because I can look at myself and say a lot of that comes from my ego. You couldn't possibly have an issue with me. Like, I'm telling you my experiences. How are you having an issue with me? But it could be because, like you just said, I might be overwhelming the person with my experience, and they may not even be in. I might have called them, and they was in the middle of trying to take a shit. They answered because it was me, so maybe I have to be cognizant. I'm telling you what it is. Maybe I have to be cognizant of like my own gravitational pull, and being like, in order for me to protect my energy and protect my space, and also make sure that I'm uplifting other people's boundaries that they're maybe not sure that they can even take with me.
Yeah.
Because there's a responsibility I think I have.
Yeah.
I think we all have, is to be like, it's not we're self-absorbed because human nature, right? We're self-absorbed because we're trying to survive. But like, what does it look like to say, you know what, Yev, I know that you reached out to me like 4 times this week. I just need to tell you that I see your message.
Yes.
I am wholly appreciative that you reached out to me. I'm really just feeling like non-communicative unless it's about these sorts of topics and it has nothing to do with you. And then, you can make the decision as to whether or not I'm a weirdo or whatever. But then you could be like, you know what, thanks for sharing that with me. Because then now I don't have to process my own thoughts and emotions about the lack of interaction. I don't know if that makes sense. So.
Well, especially coming out of a few relationships that I always felt that I was like the main person that was emotionally driving the relationship to try to will it to work. I always feel that like the person's mad at me when there's a lack of communication, and that can kind of be something that is hard for me to sit with. So ultimately, having people like who do that, who say, hey, I'm like up to my ears in like a lot of other things, and I really want to talk to you, but not in the space that I am in now. Let me try to put like a couple tick marks along my to-do list as something that like I can cross off and say like I have a little bit more peace, or a little bit more understanding of like what my next week is going to look like, or my next month is going to look like, or my next day is
helpful.
Yeah, it's kind of like, let me take care of me to be able to help to empty my container, my cup, whatever, a little bit, so I can actually be impactful in the way that I know that I can be if I'm showing up as my best self, which means that I'm doing all the stuff back here to actually set myself up to be that and to do that.
It's amazing like how well we can take care of each other. And I'm not talking about being able to put money in someone's PayPal. Money's good, right? But like, whether you have it or not, like building these bonds that like make sense, right? Is a spiritual practice in itself, right? Because it's mirror work. It's really like reflecting like Like, I really just appreciate this entire conversation, because I feel like I'm walking away with a sense of not only validation, but like a few tips and tricks about like how to show up for myself.
Yes.
If I don't get paid this week, how do I show up for myself
Mm-hmm.
when my anxiety hits the roof? How do I show up for myself without reaching for the Cuervo? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not that I won't, but like, how can I take less? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I really just appreciate having these conversations. And I would actually like for you to come back at some point and us, like, you know, I'm gonna definitely ask for viewer feedback, listener feedback, and to see what it is that people are hoping for.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like these conversations are so necessary from
Yeah.
people from all different walks of life. You know?
Absolutely.
I'm so happy that you're here. It's not even funny. And I'm glad that we connected. I feel like it was a long time. I feel like, you know, you were St. Patrick and you were driving the snakes out of my Ireland or something like that, because you've been trying to get me to sit down with you and talk about this very thing. And a lot of healers tell me that. They're like, DiDi, like, it's time. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not
Mhm.
time.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, right? So
It's not time.
I pay attention in a way that on social media, I think I'm reading between the lines of a lot of things that are being posted. And like I definitely tune into you because I think at some points in time I see a slightly younger me.
Mm.
And I see someone who I also admire very, very deeply. And so you know, in some senses, it's like, you okay, sis? Is like, that's kind of it, you know? And I wasn't particularly fully ready to step into this space until more recently. I feel like it's been almost like in October, it'll be like 4 years that I've lived in Brooklyn. But,
Right.
you know, I have been relatively quiet about my comings and goings and what's going on with me, partially because of the fact that I needed to fall on my face.
Right.
And I think a lot of the time when you are humbled by life in a way that you actually, you know, really, really like fight to get back up from, um, you learn that you cannot go back to the way that you once were. And
What you were
ultimately,
saying about death of the ego and the old
yeah,
self.
yeah. And so
It's
for
heavy stuff.
me, yeah, and I'm so excited for you for this you know, new endeavor that you have, and I think it's going to be impactful in a way that is meaningful to many people for many reasons. And I think that, you know, ultimately I'm happy that you're here now, and it was not about me nudging you forward before you were ready, but more just being like, look, that post that you said, or that quote that you shared, or that frustration that you feel, or whatever like that, I understand that. And if anything, just kind of like how a little kid will, like, when they're learning to walk, they kind of like walk away and they look for their parent like behind them to make sure that like their parent is watching them. It's kind of like that. It's like having that little glance of like, you good, you good. And you can do that to a lot of people without energetically spending all of your energy.
Right.
And I
Right.
think kind of where we need to be is kind of like on this like little energetic change of checking in with the people that seem to be in that space at that moment. Just to say, I see you. I understand maybe the feelings that are you're feeling, and I'm here if you would like to talk. And if you don't want to talk, we move on. But the offering and the invitation will be there when you're ready.
When we first started the call, you asked me a question. You
Yeah.
said, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I have a podcast. I'm fine. Like, you know? And I actually wasn't fine. I was having a lot of anxiety about this conversation because this is real reflective work. I don't know if people get that yet, because we're in the midst of a pandemic, but this is the perfect time to like actually pull into oneself, because it's the only self we'll ever have, right?
Absolutely.
And I want to say thank you for asking me how I was doing, you know what I'm saying? And because no one ever asks, how are you doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? They just expect the content to keep coming.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate that. I have a question for you.
Yes.
At the end of every podcast, I ask this question because I'm trying to be in my own practice, right? So it's a two-part question. The first question is, did I ask you the right questions? Was there a question I missed that you really wanted me to ask you and you're surprised I didn't ask you? And two, who would you like to see on the show? I love this part.
So, I think that you asked me the perfect questions for the conversation that we were having. I don't feel like there was anything that was missed, but you know, it was refreshing.
What?
That you weren't like, we didn't really talk about men.
Thank God. I'm so over it. I'm so over it. I'm sitting here texting Anthony like, can y'all be quiet? I'm on my live.
Like, I feel like that is like one of the easy crutches that like a lot of women fall into as far as like having like conversation. And I feel like that is a whole separate thing, and it actually should be private. Like, that's just something to ask like off air and not be like, so tell me like what's going on. No,
This is my questions for you. And not
Look
one
at that.
was relationship outside of the relationship to oneself and relationship to others was romantic. I just didn't feel like you and I were in a space to talk. I also feel like you and I will have that conversation in due time, but I just felt like today wasn't that day. Like, I just got that vibe. So thank you.
And I think that what it boils down to is like validation or non-validation in that way is just, it's false. And we need to get that. Like, we need to just like be like, I affirm me, period. And if you affirm you and we affirm each other, then it like whatever weird like connected relationship stuff that's outside of it doesn't really matter to what's connecting and what is landing for both of us. I feel like that whole like women needing to be valued by men and exalted or looked up to or whatever. It's like that. Yes, like there is a part of it that is absolutely wonderful, but there's also a part of it where it's like we need to step away from that and be like, I affirm myself.
Right.
I love myself. These are the ways in which I am loving myself in relationship and non-relationship. And that, I think that's a way to get away from some of the patriarchal attitudes that come in through even casual conversation.
Right. We don't realize how much space the patriarchy actually takes up. So
Word.
expensive.
And then, okay, so for a guest, is her name Adrienne Marie Brown? Yeah.
I reached out to her and her team got back to me. We've been having this conversation for a year, actually. And Adrienne Marie Brown is on a sabbatical right now.
Yeah.
And she will be available. Hopefully the ancestors have Adrienne in our cards for June. I'm really hoping that the podcast continues until then, because it's so weird that you just said that. I got an email today. I used one of her quotes in a conversation with my job, and I got an email today from an epidemiologist who was like, I think DiDi's answer is the right answer that we've been looking for. And I was like, I'm so glad I attributed you, Adrienne. Like, I love you to death. Come on, emergent strategy. Like, you know, and so it's very interesting that your energy brought her name up. And that's all I'll say about that.
I mean, I listen to their podcast. I follow her on social. I've tried to get into a couple of her workshops, but they literally sell out like in a
Like
minute.
hotcakes,
Um,
hotcakes.
but like she's one of those people that I like. I'm so glad that there's a her, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And that's why she would be the name that I would put out there as the person that I would love to see on your podcast.
I will circle back to that conversation because I really wanted, for this month or for May, but the sabbatical exists, and
Yeah.
I'll just hope for all the good things and for it to come in the time it's supposed to, and not be like, well, I've been waiting forever for you.
Yeah. But I have like both of her books, and I love where activism is going, and I think she's one of the main people that I really am so just like I find her to be so compelling, so interesting.
Yeah.
And and I love, and I'm committed to being a lifelong learner. So like I'm one of those people who loves like almost like the different counterculture ways in which she was already preparing for a situation like this. I wasn't there.
He was like, it's our nightmare. And I was like,
I don't read a lot of sci-fi, like that's not really my jam, but like
right.
I could totally embrace her love for Octavia Butler's work. I could totally like how she is like just like she's just, I love her feminine energy. I love her. Yes, see. I love her intellect, and I just, yeah, I mean, there's some times where it's like, because I never want to be that person who's like, I have it all figured out. I love figuring it out in chorus. I love figuring it out at aha moment in chorus.
Right.
And I would be that person who will continue to stay in that humble space of curiosity for the sake of having and listening to somebody else who has a completely different way of which they're looking at things, but I appreciate it because it is valid. It comes from a place of knowing and personal growth experience and all of those things. And that's how we really have to honor each other too, I think, is just being like, I've never had that experience. Tell me about that. Instead of being like, oh, well, you know what? I did have, no, let that person tell you what they know, because ultimately we are better for it. We should be just as good. It's like the reason why we have two ears and one mouth is so that we listen more than we actually speak.
You were talking about, I have to say this, you were talking about before, like this codependent space sometimes where we're like, if someone is telling a story, instead of like receiving the story, we always listen to respond and be like, well, my experience with it. And it kind of erases the person's ability to be seen in that moment,
Yeah.
And
yes.
So I just, you circled back to so many good points. I can't wait till we talk again.
I can't wait either. Thank you so much, DiDi. This was a pleasure. Like literally, I loved every minute. So thank you so much.
Yevgene, thank you so much for appearing on the show. This has been another wonderful episode of The Full Set. And I hope y'all have a great night. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.